How would you define sin? If you follow the likes of the Westminster Divines, the writers of the Westminster Confession and larger and shorter catechisms, you'd try to write an abstract definition. For example, the shorter catechism defines sin as any want or conformity unto or transgression of the law of God. Fair enough. But there is another way to talk about sin using terms from the Bible itself. In a fascinating book called Sin, a History, Old Testament scholar Gary Anderson of Notre Dame approaches the subject by attending to the metaphors the Bible uses to talk about sin. As it turns out, we use metaphorical language all the time to compare one thing to another, and we usually don't even think much about it. For example, we say things like, "He's an open book," "She wears her feelings on her sleeve," "the whole enchilada," and the list goes on and on. We use these metaphors not only to make our language more colorful, by the way, there's another metaphor, but because metaphors often help us see things more clearly. This week, I want to look at 3 different metaphors Anderson talks about and how they pop up, another metaphor there, in Christian thought about sin and forgiveness. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, October 20th, 2025. Have you ever had such a sense of guilt that it felt like a physical weight upon your shoulders? We probably all have. Weight is a metaphor we commonly use to talk about our sense of guilt or shame for wrongs we have committed against others. Turns out the Bible uses this metaphor as well. So, I have talked in the past about the story of Cain and Abel as an example of sin as a force that, like a wild animal, crouches in wait for us. That's one metaphor in the story. But there is another metaphor at play that we can readily identify with. Let me read the story again. Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let us go out to the field." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear." It's a terrible crime to kill one's brother, but it's one that at first doesn't weigh so heavily on Cain. But after God confronts him with the enormity of his crime and metes out his punishment, Cain says, "My punishment is greater than I can bear." But the word punishment in Hebrew also happens to be the word for sin. Anderson makes a compelling argument that it is not the punishment that is too much for Cain to bear, but the guilt of his sin against his brother. We can readily identify with Cain's sense of guilt here as a heavy weight, even if we've never done something as drastic as murder a sibling. There is a fascinating passage in the prophet Ezekiel that also points to sin as a burden, as a physical weight. One of the things we see throughout the prophets is what you might call sign actions, things the prophets do to symbolize the sin of Israel. For example, Hosea marries a prostitute to symbolize the infidelity of the people of Israel who worshipped other gods alongside the Lord. In this passage from Ezekiel, God commands the prophet to do something dramatic. We read, "Lie on your left side and place the punishment of the house of Israel upon it. You shall bear their punishment for the number of the days that you lie there. For I assign you a number of days, 390 days, equal to the number of the years of their punishment. And so you shall bear the punishment of the house of Israel. When you have completed these, you shall lie down a second time, but on your right side, and bear the punishment of the house of Judah. 40 days I assign you, 1 day for each year. So what's interesting here is that sin can be described as a burden that weighs us down. When we return tomorrow, we'll see how this weight can be removed from us. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.